Now suing the city of Los Angeles, accusing the city of unlawfully withholding and deleting messages from the mayor's phone.
You know, sometimes you just gotta look at what is going on in blue cities in the United States of America just for a laugh, just for a little bit of joy, because honestly, if this was being done by politicians that do not have that magical D next to their name on your television screens, there would be people freaking out, raging out, even though, again, this is just as corrupt and just as problematic as many similar scandals that we see being portrayed in the mainstream media when they are related to conservatives. So in this particular instance, I just opened with a clip announcing that the Los Angeles Times is suing LA Mayor Karen Bass because she is not complying with California open records laws because she deleted text messages, again, in and around when the fires in Los Angeles, specifically the Palisades, ended up breaking out in order to cover up what she was actually doing and saying while she was on vacation in Ghana, to which it is very important to acknowledge she left after receiving fire warnings related to the disaster that was impending in the state of California. But of course, she put herself first. She decided that she was going to be an international diplomat, despite the fact that she campaigned on not leaving the country on the taxpayer dime. And then she decided to counteract this lawsuit by releasing selected messages about her response in the early hours of the fire that paint her as an incredibly sympathetic and care hard more than anybody else type of politician, while of course redacting all of the important records that we want to see. Again, it's absurd, it's crazy, it's the destruction of evidence, but what do we expect from the mayor of Los Angeles, or from any of these mayors of any major metropolitan areas, especially again, when they can double up and say that they're only being criticized because they're a black woman in power, as the super mayor would say.
Because y'all got false narratives out there, and y'all should be ashamed of yourself. Y'all black. Y'all are black. And y'all sitting up here beating and attacking on a black woman that's in power. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. All the stuff that y'all did to get people to come to our community, to just diss and down our community. Shame on y'all.
Which, make no mistake about it, this is one of the major reasons why so many on the left are covering up for Karen Bass. Now, we're going to get into this. We're going to break this down. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
The mayor's office initially said that there were no responsive records and that the mayor's phone auto deletes those messages every 30 days. So let's talk about the over 2-month process of actually obtaining these texts and how they were ultimately recovered.
Absolutely. So we filed a public records request. And for viewers who aren't familiar, in California and most other places, officials are required to turn over a great deal of records to the public, to journalists, to really any interested party. And so we really wanted to know what Bass had been doing during this almost 24-hour period of time when she was traveling from Ghana to Los Angeles during the first 24 hours of the Palisades fire. So on January 10th, a few days after the fire broke out, we filed a public records request for all of her texts relating to fire response or travel plans sent during this time period. And nearly 2 months later, the city finally got back to us and told us there were no responsive records. And so I was very confused by that, since, you know, she had said she had been texting, Supervisor Barger had said she'd been texting with Bass. We kind of couldn't quite figure out, well, what was going on there and why there wouldn't be any text messages. And then her office told us they had been deleted. And then they later told us they were able to recover that.
So it's very important for you guys to understand that the media is, in general, on the Democrat side. This was a very basic open records request being submitted to the state of California, but as described by this LA Times reporter, who again is working with the company that is currently suing Karen Bass, they initially ended up telling her that the records, of course, were not even applicable to this open records law. Then, of course, they told them that these records were actually deleted. Karen Bass deleted the text messages around the crucial period. However, they ended up hiring an outside company in order to recover this deleted material, which, by the way, should have never been deleted in the first place. And they ended up releasing the messages that they just happened to recover from Karen Bass's phone to the LA Times.
I think the text really gives us a lot of insight, frankly, into how she was reacting in these early hours. You know, there's a lot of messages from federal officials, from the Biden White House, both California senators, people checking in, kind of asking how they can help. You can see her right away trying to marshal resources for the city. And granted, I should also say this is a limited window into how she was responding. We don't know about her phone calls. We don't know about her emails. But I think it also really humanizes the mayor, to be honest, in this moment. You really see her as a person desperately trying to get home.
And it turns out, and this may shock all of you out there in the audience, that the messages that they happen to be able to recover and release to the LA Times all painted Karen Bass in a good light. They all showed her to be a very caring and humanized figure who is working through the process, trying to desperately get back to her people because Karen Bass is such a good leader. I mean, that's what those messages showed, that the technology company just happened to be able to recover, that Karen Bass just happened to delete for no reason because they showed her in such a good light, and you're just supposed to accept that. That is actually the slop that the Democrats are trying to feed the media so they could serve it out to the public.
A limited view for sure. The messages provided are, let's say, curated, very curated, painting a collaborative picture. State and federal officials offering support. One text from Supervisor Barger even says that the city has been incredible. But missing is any correspondence with then Fire Chief Kristen Crowley or City Council President Marquise Harris Dawson, who was acting mayor as Bass was in Ghana and on her way back. Now, this may be difficult, but let's talk about what isn't there.
So, of course, we end up getting these 125 messages or so that paint Karen Bass as this kind-hearted, compassionate figure who cares so hard about Angelenos, the people that she represents. However, we don't have any messages between her and relevant government officials like the fire chief, Crowley, and that should be absolutely crucial because if you'll recall, Karen Bass's position is that Crowley never informed her on the seriousness and the risk of this particular fire. Of course, Crowley is responsible for this because she has been fired based on her performance related to the LA fires, and this is of course despite the fact that Crowley in reality was likely fired for criticizing Karen Bass publicly because in the beginning they were all in on this cover-up together, but she appeared to have broken rank, talked about the problems with the LA fire budget and all the different various things that Karen Bass did not do that made this crisis much worse, and that's why she ended up getting fired in a lot of people's opinions. But these text messages would be a great window into the response at the time so we could see who was the incompetent one. Was it Karen Bass or was it Crowley or was it both of them? Do both of them deserve to face the political consequences of this particular fire? Now, of course, we talked about on this channel multiple different times how the warnings about the fires were clear and obvious even from the media. You didn't need to have government officials tell you it was going to be all that bad because you had Rick Caruso, who ended up losing the mayoral election to Karen Bass, pre-positioning water tanks and private firefighters in and around his properties in the Palisades 2 days prior to Karen Bass leaving on the trip to Ghana because everybody who was paying attention knew that these fires were going to be bad and knew that there were going to be significant problems in and around this particular area. And in addition to that, of course, we have the San Ynez Reservoir issue, which was being managed by a DEI hire over at the water department, the first Latina woman in that position. Again, absurd when you realize that the main reservoir was completely empty. 117 millions of gallons of water were not able to be used in order to fight the fires. Instead, they only had 3 1 million gallon backup tanks. But apparently, we're not supposed to say that that's mismanaged, that that's a big deal, that that's anything to be concerned about, even though obviously we should understand that having 40 times the amount of water is better than having 40 times the less water. But of course, we don't have the communications that would be relevant to discussing that particular issue because Karen Bass's deletion and then convenient recovery just does not have any information that puts her in a bad light.
So do you think that the mayor's office is intentionally withholding what could be more damaging messages?
I would not speculate about something like that.
Yeah, you know, the council to the mayor previously told you that Bass's texts were ephemeral and did not have to be shared, according to the California Public Records Act. Your response to that?
Yeah, I don't agree with that interpretation of the law.
Now, this Los Angeles Reporter honestly is a little bit too soft on Karen Bass when we obviously have evidence of a cover-up right here, or at least non-compliance with records laws. And the reason why I think this is absolutely crucial to highlight and to point out is because there are 2 scandals currently going on related to the same thing in the Trump administration with the Signal chat, and the first scandal happens to be related to them idiotically adding in the head of the Atlantic, their editor-in-chief, into said Signal chat, but the second one was the fact that they are using a Signal chat, which of course will delete messages after, I believe it was set to a week, in order to not have them viewable by the public, which again is against records laws. And it's very important for people to understand that regardless of whether or not you think the Democrats are taking that scandal too far, regardless of the debate on whether or not something is war plans or attack plans, the fact is records laws are important. There are official government channels in order to document these types of communications. And the reason why is because if something goes wrong, if something goes awry, the public has an interest in seeing what our government officials are doing. So in the Signal situation, I'm actually in agreement that we need to have those records preserved. They need to be made available to the public to be viewed later on if they're national security related, or to be viewed in a timely manner if they aren't. And the reason why is because we want to know what our politicians are doing. We should have access to that information because it's important. So yes, while there is an additional scandal of adding in that Goldberg person, let us not forget that they should be complying with records rules in the Trump administration, and those standards need to be held not just to our political opponents, but to people that we agree with or even disagree with on whatever issue, but generally are aligned with, because in reality, this is important information. Because if the Trump administration can use as a justification security or whatever, then people don't really have a good grounded argument to argue against Karen Bass's interpretation of the law and how she can avoid disclosing this information to the public, even though what we're seeing is an obvious cover-up right here, a blunder possibly on the federal level, but the fact is we should still have the same standard for these politicians. And again, I will point out that California politicians are notorious for doing this kind of thing. Gavin Newsom, it was recently discovered, is giving out burner phones to donors in order to have communications with him so that he cannot be subject to open records requests. And if we just allow this to go down at the California level or at the federal government level, the fact is the American people will be less informed about what's going on with our politicians, and that is not good, again, whether you are aligned with the Democrats or with the Republicans. But of course, many a progressive, many a Democrat are taking the line that any attacks on Karen Bass, the innocent Beba Angel Aladdin, the strong black woman as the LA mayor, are unfair and racist and absurd. And by the way, this came up recently when we were covering the back and forth between the Young Turks and Francesca Fiorentini, where she cited them discussing who's at fault in the California wildfires, i.e. the Democratic Party, as something that's just bad and horrible and terrible, because you should never be able to blame innocent Beba Angel Democrats like Karen Bass for their incompetence or for even covering up their incompetence. I mean, seriously, people, just think about what they're trying to actually sell you if you are a resident of California, if you are a resident of Los Angeles, if you were victimized by the Palisades fire, which, by the way, we talked about before, how Karen Bass promised in front of Trump that people were going to be able to start the rebuild within 7 days.
That'd be 18 months. Is it not 18 months? Is it like we that's the answer that we got, and that's what we're all hanging on. Yes. So if you're telling us now faster, is it 6 months? Is it, I mean, all of our lives, rents, all this stuff is weighing on this.
6 months. Yeah. And the number one thing that we are going to do immediately, and you will see this happen, is to clear out the debris. And we're concerned right now over the weekend because of the potential rain, but we are going to move as fast as we can. But we want you to be safe, and we want you to be back in your homes immediately.
But the people are willing to clean out their own debris. It doesn't cost a lot. You should let them do it, because by the time you hire contractors, it's going to be 2 years.
If a family...
People are willing to get a dumpster and do it themselves and clean it out.
And they can't.
There's not that much left. It's all incinerated.
That's right.
And, it's just going to take a long time if you do. You can do some of it, but a lot of these people, I know that guy right there that's talking. I know my people. You'll be on that thing tonight, throwing the stuff away, and your site it'll look perfect within 24 hours. And that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to wait around for 7 months till the city hires some demolition contract that's going to charge him $25,000 to do his lot.
Only to then do an interview later on where she said it's going to take minimum 3, but probably closer to 5 years in order for people to get the rebuild.
We met up with Mayor Bass at the Impacted Worker and Family Recovery Center, now open in Culver City. It's one of 4 locations for those impacted by the fire. Wildfires.
And it doesn't matter where you live, where you're from, you can come here and get an array of resources, from direct cash assistance to unemployment, job assistance, training.
I asked, what's a realistic timetable for rebuilding the Palisades?
3 years would probably be the fastest, but probably it would be more like 5. So it really depends on the individual circumstances.
We found out that only 4 permits have been issued related to this, but the idea that she is also going to just lie to people in public like that and immediately contradict her words in other interviews, but in addition to that, make the case that she's so honest and so genuine that she inadvertently deleted these records that, by the way, she doesn't even actually have to keep or turn over, even though the California law says you have to keep them for at least 2 years, but she's not breaking the law in that regard. But then, just in good faith, she hired an outside company in order to recover the data, but coincidentally, they only recovered the messages that were convenient for Karen Bass. They only recovered the texts that actually humanize her and make her look like she was so desperate to get back to her people, and not have any of the messages recovered with, again, crucial people that would show whether or not her claims about Crowley not warning her and being the problem were actually true. It's just absurd. It's insane. This is the corruption that Democrats are allowed to get away with time and time again when we see a similar scandal, albeit something different. One is related to the worst disaster in probably the history of Los Angeles. The other is a national security issue. The different levels of scrutinization, even from the national to the local media. Again, just really think about what is being sold to you. Really think about how they're able to get away with this and how absurd it is that if you have that magic D next to your name that says Democrat, you are able to just do whatever all the time, buck any kind of disclosure, record keeping rules, and nobody will say anything, or there won't be enough fierce backlash. You will be sued by the Los Angeles Times, but at the same time, a Los Angeles Times reporter will be talking about, she kind of looks really good in these messages, and we just want these requests because maybe they'll show how good she looks. Again, crazy from top to bottom, but of course, I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. Now, as per usual, if you like this video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Karen Bass deleting records and then recovering them and then releasing very specific records to make her look good. Till next time.